What's up, guys? We are finally here, UFC 314 fight week, and I haven't done a prediction video in a while. And what better way to return with a prediction video for the best card of the year so far, in my opinion. We've had some absolute duds in UFC 311, 312, and even 313 I wasn't too impressed with. I'm sorry, man. My expectations are a little bit higher. I'm not going to be a UFC show, but either way, UFC 314 is a really good card. So I'm going to give my predictions for every single fight on the card. And yeah, man, let's get right into it. Volkanovski's return is upon us, starting off with the earliest fight on the card of the early prelims. Nora Cornolle versus Hailey Cowan. What an absolute stellar and banger of a fight. I mean, if you're a true hardcore of the hardcore, you've been looking forward to this fight for months upon end. And yeah, man, I mean, the return of Nora Cornolle, I couldn't be more excited, I'll be honest, guys. I mean, she's 4-1 in her last 5, coming off of L, versus Hailey Cowan, coming off of L. And yeah, obviously, I don't know anything about either of these girls. I'm going to pick Nora Cornolle. She looks more tough and built, you know? I ain't gonna lie, Hailey Cowan looks like she has like a secondary job as an OnlyFans star. So I'm picking Nora Cornolle by a 30-27 decision. That's my pick for this first fight. Obviously, I'm not going to spend too much time on this fight. Moving on to the next fight. Treasean Gore versus Marco Tulio. Now, Treasean Gore is 2-2 in his last 4 versus Marco Tulio, who's 5-0 in his last 5. Out of Sao Paulo, you know, they're both around the same exact age, both 30, both 6 foot tall, both 75-inch reach. Man, this is a mirror matchup right here. But it looks like Marco Tulio is the heavy favorite, negative 355, moderate favorite, according to Tapology at least. But listen, man, I ain't picking Treasean Gore. I ain't doing it. I just don't think he's that good. This guy's got a Brock Lesnar type record. 5-2, bro. How are you 5-2 in the UFC? Give me Marco Tulio all day long, and I'm going to take him by a second round TKO. That's what I'm going to take him by. Treasean Gore, listen, bro, you ain't him anymore, bro. Sit down, shoot up, and that's it. I'm picking Marco Tulio by a second round TKO. Moving on to the next fight, Sumudaerji versus Mitch Raposo. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much about Mitch Raposo. It looks like he has an L. Came into the UFC, has 1 L, 4-1 in his last 5. However, Sumudaerji is 0-3 in his last 3. And this is a guy that got finished by who? He got finished by Tim Elliott, and wait, he got finished by Matt Schnell, bro. If you're getting finished by the Unks, Tim Elliott and Matt Schnell, you might want to rethink your career choice. Ain't no way I'm picking the Tibetan Eagle when they have freaking goats like Mitch Raposo coming up in the scene, dude. Mitch Raposo is 9-2. He's looking to take over, man. This guy's easily about to become up to the flyweight top 5. I mean, this guy's looking better than Joshua Van these days. So I'm taking Mitch Raposo. Ain't no way I'm picking a guy that's getting finished by Matt Schnell and Tim Elliott and is on a 3-fight losing streak. I don't know how he's a favorite. I'll be honest. Sumudaerji on a 3-fight losing streak, finishing 2 of his last 3 losses. Yeah, man, I'm going with the underdog and Mitch Raposo. I think he's going to get it done by decision. It's going to be a close fight. Mitch Raposo is 5'5", so your typical run-of-the-mill little runt. But yeah, I think he's going to get it done against Sumudaerji. Sumudaerji has way more experience, obviously, but I don't know, man. A guy on a 3-fight losing streak getting finished by subpar competition past their prime guys, it's not a good look. So give me Mitch Raposo by a decision. 29-28. Sumudaerji will win one of the rounds. Moving on to the next fight, Sedriques Dumas versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. Now, you know, you look at Sedriques Dumas, and this guy's probably the most hood fighter in the UFC. And a lot of times, these guys pass the eye test, you know. Sedriques Dumas, this guy looks like he'd be a killer, dude. Like, talk, that's what be in the streets, man. I'll knock you out. But to everyone's surprise, this guy is actually a decision merchant. I don't think Sedriques Dumas has a single finish in the UFC. He's a decision merchant, and I think he got finished by Borishev, the Santa Claus guy who wears the Santa hat. And while Michal Oleksiejczuk is on a 1-4 in his last 5 and on a 3-fight losing streak, I just don't see anything in Sedriques Dumas's like game that really poses a threat to Michal Oleksiejczuk. I think Michal Oleksiejczuk is the better striker, the better grappler, the better overall mixed martial artist. So I think Michal Oleksiejczuk is going to handily beat Sedriques Dumas. I don't know if he'll finish him. Dumas can probably last at a decision, but Michal Oleksiejczuk, I do think he's going to get back in the win column. The GOAT, Michal Oleksiejczuk. People forget, man, Michal Oleksiejczuk knocked out Kevin Holland with a headbutt. Yes, it was an accident, but yeah, man, like, go watch any of Sedriques Dumas's fights. I was just not that impressive. Like, I don't see a guy that's going to be a top 15, top 10, top 5 fighter by any means. This dude needs to stay in the hood streets of Florida and out of the UFC octagon. because this guy's a decision merchant. And how you from the hood and you're a decision merchant, bro? Make it make sense. Dude's from the hood supposed to be swinging and banging and knocking dudes out. This dude's from the hood and he's from decision merchant. I'm picking Michal Oleksiejczuk. You know what? By a third round TKO. That's my pick. He is the favorite. So, yeah. The odds makers clearly see something. A guy on a 3-fight losing streak still being the favorite. That's actually crazy. Sumudaerji is also the favorite and being on a 3-fight losing streak. So, the odds makers are cooking up some guys on 3-fight losing streaks as favorites. That's quite interesting. But, yes, give me Michal Oleksiejczuk by a third round TKO. Moving on to the next fight. Old head Darren Elkins versus Julian Erosa. Now, people forget, man, Julian Erosa submitted Christian Rodriguez, who's the prospect killer. Julian Erosa is on a 2-fight win streak. Darren Elkins is on a 2-fight win streak. However, Darren Elkins beat Daniel Pineda, who's 40 years old. I know Darren Elkins is also 40, but come on, dude. Darren Elkins is almost 41. This guy's nickname is The Damage. Ironically, he's taken some of the most damage out of any UFC fighter I've ever seen. I mean, this guy goes to war and scraps every time. I am worried about Darren Elkins' post-UFC career. There's a reason this guy's a near 4-1 underdog. And, yeah, man, I think that Julian Erosa is going to finish Darren Elkins. I know Darren Elkins is tough, but listen, bro. This ain't the Darren Elkins that fought Mirsad Bektik. This ain't the Darren Elkins that's been scrapping and banging. This is almost 41-year-old Darren Elkins taking more damage than he has in his entire career. That dog is eventually going to run out, and I don't think he'll have that dog in him enough to beat Julian Erosa. I think Julian Erosa is going to find a second round. You know what? I'll pick Julian Erosa by decision. I'll give Darren Elkins some respect. I do think Darren Elkins is a tough vet. You know, he's hard for anybody to beat, but Julian Erosa, younger, less damage taken, a better skill set, in my opinion. It's crazy how close these guys are, like in terms of their stats. They're both 3-2 in their last 5, 30-11 versus 29-11. They're not similar reach, but it's crazy how like similar these guys are in terms of like their records and their stats and whatnot. But nonetheless, I got to go with the favorite, Julian Erosa. Give me him by a decision. I know I said Darren Elkins' dog is eventually going to run out, but I think he'll have enough in the tank to last a decision. So, yeah, Julian Erosa by a decision. Then we have Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller. Now, this is the perfect young buck versus biggest unk type matchup. You know, you got Chase Hooper, the young buck, 25 years old. He's a 7-1 favorite, which is crazy. Jim Miller's a 5-1 underdog. Jim Miller is 41, whereas Chase Hooper is, 25? So we're looking at a 16-year age gap. I mean, Jim Miller's on his way to being 42. It's crazy that Jim Miller's the only UFC fighter in history to fight at UFC 100, 200, and 300. Can you imagine if this guy's like 48 fighting at UFC 400? That's obviously not going to happen, but listen, man, I cannot get the memory out of my head of Jim Miller getting absolutely sliced and diced by Bobby Green at UFC 300. I know he's bounced back since then against an aging, who was it? Who did he retire? He retired Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson, he's never really been any good. Damon Jackson's washed. Ever since he got folded like a pretzel by Tapori, he's not been the same guy. And it's like, I gotta agree with the odds makers here, man. Chase Hooper. I know a lot of people crap on Chase Hooper. Yeah, he got finished by Steve Garcia. You know, yeah, Chase Hooper looks like Ben Askren's son. I understand, man. But listen, Chase Hooper is a solid fighter, man. There's a reason this guy is 4-0 on the come up. You know, you just submitted the GOAT Clay Guida. If that ain't a sign that this guy is going to be something great in the future. I mean, not everybody submits Clay Guida. No, I think this is a great test for Chase Hooper. And Jim Miller's grappling is no joke. So if Chase Hooper goes out there and dominates Jim Miller in the grappling, I would be very impressed because Jim Miller typically out-grapples most guys that he fights. When's the last time Jim Miller got submitted? Was he by Charles Oliveira way, way back in the day? It's been a while, and I know Jim Miller got pieced up by Bobby Green, but I don't know, man. Will this be a striking fight, or will Chase Hooper bring it to the mat? I don't know. I think that Chase Hooper is going to be faster than old man Jim Miller, but Jim Miller is probably the more dangerous striker, you know? So with all that word salad coming out of my mouth and all that being said, I am going to go, you know what? I'm going to pick an unlikely pick. I'm going to pick Chase Hooper, and I'm going to pick him by second round submission. Yes, that's right. I'm picking him to submit Unk Jim Miller to barbecue. Listen, me and Jim Miller, we fried some burger patties in my day. He's a fellow Unk, you know? So we'll have Jim Miller interview on the channel eventually. But yeah, nonetheless, I'm taking the dream, the young buck, the little cuck, and Ben Askren's son, Chase Hooper, by a second round submission. I know picking a guy to submit Jim Miller is crazy. And a lot of people are going to say that Chase Hooper's overrated. He sucks. I'm still picking him. There's a reason he's a 7-1 favorite. Give me Chase Hooper by submission. And on to the next fight up the card, man. If there's one thing I learned about WMMA, It's whenever you have a Brazilian fighter that looks like Virna Jandiroba, you do not pick against her. Listen, she is the kind of Amanda Nunes, if you know what I'm saying. She is the kind of Jessica Andrade, if you see where I'm getting at, the Amanda Lemos type girl. You know what I'm saying, man? You don't pick against Kakara and Virna Jandiroba whenever she's looking like that, dude. Listen, Xiaonan has lost against only the absolute best. Well, she's lost against Carla Esparza and Zhang Weili. In hindsight, her getting finished by Carla Esparza is kind of embarrassing. So I will be picking Virna Jandiroba. And yeah, I think if Virna Jandiroba wins this fight, she'll be on a 5-fight win streak, and she will officially be the #1 contender in the heavily stacked and so deep division that is the UFC strawweight division. I mean, you want to talk about stacked from top to bottom. You know what I noticed about WMMA these days as well? Look at these girls' ages. 36 years old, 10 months, 1 week, 35, 9 months, 3 weeks. It's like, man, why are these WMMA fighters so old? It's because a lot of the newer fighters just don't want to get into the sport. A lot of the younger girls decide to go into gymnastics or, you know, the OnlyFans route. I guess that's why we're seeing a lot of older fighters. It just seems like all of the prospects, Kayla Harrison, you know, Manon Fiorot, Virna Jandiroba, they're all 34, 35, 36 years old. And there's literally no young women's talent. And all the ones that are young look like they strike like they're underwater. But either way, like I said, when you have a fighter that's from Brazil looking like Virna Jandiroba, you know she's cut from that cloth, that Amanda Nunes cloth. So I'm going to pick Virna Jandiroba, and in typical WMMA fashion, I am going to pick her to win by decision. 29-28 for Virna Jandiroba, and I think she'll stamp her way to the #1 contender status. But I think that Zhang Weili is probably going to go up and fight Valentina Shevchenko. So, yeah, Virna Jandiroba by a decision. And on up to the next fight. This is going to be the headliner of the prelims, Dan 50K Ige versus Sean Woodson. Listen, I am tired of people giving Dan Ige participation trophies. Dude, he went to a close fight with Diego Lopes, man. He went to a close fight with this guy and Bryce Mitchell. Like, I don't care, dude. Dan Ige, I believe he's 3-6 in his last 9. Come on, bro. It's time to stop handing out participation trophies. This guy's losing a lot. If you fall short in every single fight, then maybe you're just not that level. I think that Dan Ige is the perfect gatekeeper into the top 15. If you can beat Dan Ige, then you're worthy of being ranked. And Sean Woodson, he doesn't really have too many notable wins, I'll be honest, but I am going to pick him. At the end of the day, Dan Ige is getting up there in age. You know, I think he's 34. He's taken a lot of damage in his career. He's been in a lot of scraps, and he's never been finished. And eventually, that chin is going to crack. Do I think Sean Woodson's going to be the one to crack Dan Ige's chin? I do not, but I am picking Sean Woodson. I do think the sniper is going to get one up on Dan Ige. I think, like I said, man, I'm one of the guys. I think Dan Ige gets way too much credit. Like, he gets participation trophy points basically for being a dog, you know, that goes to war in every fight. Like, I get that's respectable and commendable to some degree, but it's like, man, can we get some wins? You know, this guy's 2-3 in his last 5 and 3-6 in his last 9. I'm tired of the participation trophies. I like Dan Ige. I respect him because he steps up on short notice, and he's a humble guy for the most part. But come on, man, let's get some wins. Like, let's get Dan Ige getting some finishes. Like, this dude's finishing Andre Philly. It's like, okay, it's Andre Philly. Who hasn't finished Andre Philly? My grandma finished Andre Philly last year. I mean, come on, dude. So I'm picking Sean Woodson, the sniper, by a decision. I do think that Dan Ige's toughness will carry him through this fight, and he will make it to the belt. But yeah, I do want to stress that I do think that Dan Ige gets way too much credit for kind of just being a scrapper. Let's give guys credit for actually winning fights. Like, man, Dan Ige's good, man. He might be 3-6 in his last 9, man, but every time he fights, it's a close fight. Okay, well, win the fight, sir. Either way, Sean Woodson by a decision is my pick. Moving on to the next fight, we got Nikita Krylov versus Dominick Reyes. Now, am I the only one that thinks that Dominick Reyes' 2-fight win streak is a little overrated? Now, listen. I like Dominick Reyes, and I do think he beat John Jones. So he should be 3-2 in his last 5. I do think he beat John Jones. However, let's keep it real. Dominick Reyes beat Dustin Jacoby and a way past his prime Anthony Smith. And I don't think he looked great in the Anthony Smith fight, man. I don't. Maybe he was showing some restraint because Anthony Smith was going through a hard time with his friend passing away. He was crying inside the octagon. Maybe Dominick Reyes showed some restraint, even though he finished him by TKO after Anthony Smith just pretty much shelled up. But yeah, man, Dominick Reyes, we really don't know if his chin is recovered, you know, because this is a guy that got chinned 3 times in a row by Jan Blachowicz, and he got spinning elbow like by Yuri badly, and then he got brutally KO'd by Ryan Spann with what seemed like a jab. And he's fought Dustin Jacoby, and he got back in the win column in that fight, got a first-round finish, and he came back against Anthony Smith and beat him. But listen, man, Dustin Jacoby and Anthony Smith, ain't Nikita Krylov. This is going to be the real test. I understand that Nikita Krylov is not a one-punch knockout artist. I get that. But he's arguably the best jiu-jitsu practitioner in that division. And, yeah, it's gonna come to probably the stand-up, because I don't know if Nikita Krylov is going to be able to get the takedown. Now, another thing to look at going into this fight is that Nikita Krylov has not fought since 2023, and I think that has something to do with, you know, what's going on over there on the other side of the world. I'm not going to say it because they're going to demonetize me, but yeah, I think Nikita Krylov was out of competition because of that, and now he's returning number 9, and Nikita Krylov is on a 3-fight win streak. Lest people forget, man. Nikita Krylov submitted Ryan Spann, dude, and he KO'd Alexander Gustafsson, man, the GOAT, dude. But Dominick Reyes, guys, he finished Anthony Smith, right? And he finished freaking Dustin Jacoby, dude. Dominick Reyes is coming back for that belt. No, I really don't think so. I'm not trying to hate on Dominick Reyes, but I think Nikita Krylov's going to be the faster fighter. I think he has a better chin. I think he's more durable. I think he has arguably better cardio. So, yeah, man, it's a close fight. They have pretty much the same height, same reach. Nikita Krylov's probably a little bit bigger. And he is the favorite, which I do understand Nikita Krylov being the favorite because, like I said, Dominick Reyes is back on 2 wins, and I am happy for him. But let's not forget that he got brutally KO'd 3 times in a row since losing that John Jones fight. Because we already know Dominick Reyes beat John Jones. Can you imagine the story of Dominick Reyes got the light heavyweight belt and dragged John Jones out of retirement and knocked him out? But either way, I think Nikita Krylov, hot take, I think Nikita Krylov is going to TKO Dominick Reyes, or maybe even KO. I'm picking Nikita Krylov by TKO. He might win by decision. I might be a casual. Maybe I'm overlooking into it, but I was not overly impressed by Dominick Reyes' Anthony Smith performance. I just didn't see a guy that was like, oh my God, dude, this guy's on his second run to the belt. I just didn't see it. I think Nikita Krylov is the more fresher fighter. He's had 2 years off. You know, maybe the ring rust will take a toll. I don't think it will. I think Nikita Krylov, he's never been the most active guy. So yeah, he's on a 3-fight win streak. Dominick Reyes is on a 2-fight win streak. So whoever wins this fight should be looking to fight in the top 5, you know? Like, I think if Nikita Krylov or Dominick Reyes win, look to book him against like a Jamal Hill whenever he comes back, or like a Jan Blachowicz, you know? Let's book those kind of fights. So Dominick Reyes can get his revenge on Jan Blachowicz finishing him for the belt and go back for his title shot if he wins. But nonetheless, I'm picking Nikita Krylov by a second round KO. Bet the house on it. No, don't bet the house on it. Moving on to the next fight on the main card, we have the debut of Patricio Pitbull. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest. I have not been a guy that has followed the career of Patricio Pitbull. I never have. Patricio Pitbull is arguably like the biggest Bellator legend, him and Michael Chandler. They built Bellator, you know. But it's clear to me that this guy is not in his prime. He's 1-2 in his last 3, so it's very surprising that the UFC signed him. His last win is a finish over Jeremy Kennedy. It's like, it's Jeremy Kennedy. That dude sucks. And Patricio Pitbull, 36-7. That's a really good record. However, you know what it also tells me, being 36-7? This guy's taken a lot of damage and went through a lot of wars. This guy's 37 years old, 36-7, 1-2 in his last 3. I know Rodriguez is on a 2-fight losing streak. I think he lost to Volkanovski and he lost to Brian Ortega. He got submitted by Ortega and he got TKO'd by Volkanovski. And Yair Rodriguez is not the most active guy either. However, he's younger. He's had way less fights. He's had half the fights that Pitbull's had. He's younger. He's the better striker. And I just think Pitbull's past his prime, man. I've watched some of his highlights. I know he has a finish over Michael Chandler back in the day, but I haven't watched too much Pitbull recently. I'm not going to pretend like I have, but I'm also not that hyped up for this fight. I'm not that hyped for the debut of Patricio Pitbull. I'm honestly not. I'm not trying to be a hater, but dude, he's a Bellator reject, dude. It's this guy, a Bellator champion, and he's 1-2 in his last 3. UFC signing fighters with negative records in their last 3. What are we doing, UFC? I'm joking. Pitbull does deserve to fight in the UFC. I do respect him as a mixed martial artist, but at 37 years old, I think the prime, faster Yair Rodriguez is going to keep the fight standing, and he's going to piece up Pitbull on the feet, and I think he'll win a dominant decision. I think Yair Rodriguez by a 30-27 decision is a solid pick, and it's what I'm going to go with, because Yair Rodriguez, he only loses to the best fighters in the world. You know, he only loses to the Frankie Edgars, the Brian Ortegas, the Volkanovskis, the Max Holloways. This dude ain't losing the schmucks. If you look at all of Yair Rodriguez's losses, it's all against high-level competition, whereas, listen, Patricio Pitbull has losses in the B League, so I'm oh man. I'm picking Yair Rodriguez. He's a 2-1 favorite. It seems like I'm picking all the favorites. I'm really not. I'm genuinely picking the guy I think is going to win. And I genuinely think that Yair Rodriguez is going to piece Patricio Pitbull up on the feet and make him feel every bit of 37 years old. Almost 38, by the way. So Patricio Pitbull and Michael Chandler are indeed some old heads. But yeah, give me Yair Rodriguez by a dominant decision, 30-27. Moving on to the next fight, feature fight of the card. This is a big one. Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell versus John Lord Silva. Now, you guys know that John's nickname being the Lord has driven Bryce Mitchell to think that he's a demon, that he needs to cast out that demon out of John Silva. And Bryce Mitchell saying he's been going to sleep and dreaming about John Silva and you know, all this crazy stuff. And listen, you already know that Dana White in the UFC put up this fight because they want to see Bryce Mitchell slept after what he said on his podcast, Ark Insanity, the first episode. We already know that Dana White and Ari Emanuel are hoping and praying that John Silva goes in there and does a Josh Emmett 2.0 and sends him into convulsions for what he said. Even Dana White was like, listen, for the guys that don't like Bryce Mitchell, this guy's one of the dumbest fighters. You get to see him knocked out on live television. You already know Dana White's going to be rubbing his hands together whenever John Silva's in the fight getting loose. But talking about their skill sets, John Silva burst onto the UFC scene last year, 4 fights, 4 wins. This guy fought Charles Jourdain, destroyed him, and then he fought Drew Dober on a week's notice and destroyed his face to a doctor stoppage, and then he just knocked out Melvin Bagdasarian, who was a really good striker. John Silva knocked him out and finished him with elbows on the ground. Whereas Bryce Mitchell, you know, he has some solid wins. He had a decent scrap with Topuria where he ended up getting submitted, but he does have wins over Edson Barboza, you know. He has a win over Dan Ige, you know. He has a win over the GOAT, Crone Gracie. So Bryce Mitchell, let me say this. I do think that Bryce Mitchell's skills are being a little underrated in this fight. Let me just say, I am picking John Silva. I do think he's the more dangerous fighter, and I think he does have the capability to keep it on the feet. It's not like Bryce Mitchell is like this like D1 wrestler that gets guys to the ground. He has great grappling, Bryce Mitchell, but he doesn't have the strongest base to get it to the ground. But he has great scrambles. He has great jiu-jitsu. You don't get twister submissions in the UFC without having a great ground game. And he was able to finish Crone Gracie with elbows, which is pretty impressive. Not really, it's Crone Gracie, but yeah, man. I think John Silva has all the momentum in the world. I don't think Bryce Mitchell's head is at like fighting high-level competition. This guy's head seems to be in other spaces. And I think John Silva is just hungrier. I think he's more dangerous. I think he's got more momentum. He's younger. He hasn't been finished in the UFC. Bryce Mitchell has been brutally finished. He's been knocked down and submitted by Topuria, and he's been sent into convulsions by Josh Emmett. That was one of the most brutal knockouts we've seen in UFC history. He was on the mat, seasoned up for a good like 4 to 5 minutes. So I think that Bryce Mitchell's skills are being undermined in this matchup. But with that being said, John Silva by second round TKO. I really do think he's going to finish Bryce Mitchell. And yeah, man, I think John Silva has, now that Topuria is going out of the division, I think that John Silva has championship potential. This guy is a really great fighter. I know he has a lot of antics in the cage, and it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. They're like, dude, I'm tired of him celebrating and spazzing out in the cage, man. It just fight. It's not that entertaining. Like, he forces his personality. I get it. But listen, why do the UFC fans hate fun so much? Like, this guy's a fun fighter. Why do you guys hate it whenever guys actually try to go out of their way to be entertaining? It's the weirdest thing. But nonetheless, I do think that John Silva is going to finish Thug Nasty, which he deserves to be finished just for that nickname. But yeah, Bryce Mitchell, in my opinion, is getting finished by John Silva. Give me John Silva by a second round TKO. Moving on to the next fight, or the co-main event. This one's interesting, right? Michael Chandler is 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Now, with his only win coming against Tony Ferguson, the ghost of Tony Ferguson, whereas Paddy Pimblett's 6-0 in the UFC. Now, we all know that Paddy Pimblett is a good grappler, you know, but he's known for leaving his chin on a silver platter. He's known for putting his chin up there and having very suspect boxing defense. And Michael Chandler is known as one of the most powerful punchers in that lightweight division. I do think that Michael Chandler has overrated power. I mean, when's the last time this guy's knocked out anybody not named Tony Ferguson? It's been like 5 years now. And Paddy Pimblett's never been KO'd. He has a hell of a chin on him. So all the people that are saying that Michael Chandler's going to go in there and steamroll Paddy Pimblett and knock him out, I just don't see it. I really don't. But nonetheless, I do think that Paddy Pimblett's going to win this fight. Listen, man, Michael Chandler is almost 39 years old. Look at the time of the fight, he will pretty much be 39. Paddy Pimblett just turned 30. He's in his absolute prime. Michael Chandler has been going around on podcasts coping about how he's not a cheater when he clearly is. This guy eye gouges, he fish hooks, he grabs gloves, he grabs cages, back of the head shots, waits out for Conor McGregor. Michael Chandler hates being labeled a cheater despite always cheating. Like, at some point, you have to admit that you're a cheater, and it's not just coincidence that every single time you fight, you're getting roasted for doing multiple fouls in the fight. And Paddy Pimblett already said if Michael Chandler tries to fish hook him, he's going to bite his fingers off, which is hilarious. But nonetheless, let's not sugarcoat it. Michael Chandler's 1-4 in his last 5. However, he is facing the top of the top guys. 2 fights against Charles Oliveira, a fight against Dustin Poirier, a fight against Justin Gaethje. So he's fighting really high-level competition. Paddy Pimblett, on the other hand, has not fought high-level competition. I mean, his last win was against Bobby Green. Then he also beat the ghost of Tony Ferguson. Then he had he submitted Jordan Levitt, right? And then he had a fight with Jared Gordon that he obviously lost. Paddy Pimblett got beat by Jared Gordon, at best 2 rounds to 1. So Paddy technically should be 4-1 in his last 5. However, I understand the notion that, like, Paddy Pimblett leaves his chin on a silver platter. But if you watch the Bobby Green fight, he was very aware of Bobby Green being a dangerous fighter on the feet. And he was very patient. It only threw leg kicks, didn't overextend. And I think we're going to see the same thing from Paddy Pimblett. I think we're going to see Paddy Pimblett play a very smart game plan. He's going to open up with leg kicks against Michael Chandler. And he's kind of probably just going to spam leg kicks. And whenever Michael Chandler overextends or tries to go for a big meaty hook, a big overhand, Paddy Pimblett's probably going to try to create a scramble, end up on the ground, and we'll see from there. Michael Chandler's a really hard guy to submit. I do find it hilarious that how Charles Oliveira had his back in 2 different fights, 2 different times, and was unable to submit him. But Dustin Poirier, of all people, is the first fighter to submit Michael Chandler. That does make me laugh inside. But just his body type, like, Michael Chandler has like that Volkanovski type neck where those guys are very hard to submit. So I don't know if Paddy Pimblett will get a submission. But I do think that he has the skill set to defeat Michael Chandler by decision. Michael Chandler, he's always talking about I'm going for the belt. At the end of the day, I want to be champion. Do you want to be champion? No, because it's like whenever this guy is faced to win a fight, he doesn't choose the winning path. He chooses the entertainment path, and us fans do appreciate that to some degree, despite all the cheating he does. When Charles Oliveira is on his back in the 5th round, he's slamming him backwards on the ground. That is entertaining, but it seems like Michael Chandler prioritizes being entertaining over actually winning fights, and that has been his downfall. With that being said, he got his ass whooped by Charles Oliveira last fight, and he deserved to get choked out by Poirier for all the cheating he did. Yeah, there's a reason that Michael Chandler is slowly becoming one of the most disliked fighters in the UFC. It's because this guy's a cheater, man. He's a cheater. I don't care how much gaslighting he does on all the podcasts he goes on. He's a proven cheater, and yeah, I think Paddy Pimblett is... I don't want to say submission because he's so hard to submit. I'm going to say Paddy Pimblett wins a 49-46 decision. If you guys do not know, this is a 5-round co-main event. So, yeah, this will be interesting. We will see. We know that Michael Chandler has 5-round cardio. This is the first time Paddy Pimblett is going to be fighting 5 rounds in the UFC. So let's see where Paddy's cardio is. I do think he will win. He's a slight favorite. And yeah, man, this might be the only fight Paddy Pimblett can win inside the top 10. Now, all these other matchups are going to be real tough for Paddy Pimblett, but I do think he has the skill set to get it done against Michael Chandler, who's 1-4 in his last 5, by the way. If Michael Chandler loses this fight, it's time to hang it up, buddy. It's time to go to the GFL. You're almost 40 years old. Send him packing. Let's move on to the last fight. You guys know the fight on the top of the card. None other than Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. Now, you guys know that Diego Lopes is my favorite fighter. So there's going to be some bias in this pick, right? But I do think that Diego Lopes is going to KO Alexander Volkanovski. Now, there are going to be people running to the comments. Dude, Diego Lopes by KO. Who is he KO'd? I mean, listen, he technically KO'd Brian Ortega and woke him up in the same combination. He destroyed Pat Sabatini. I know it's Pat Sabatini. He KO'd Sedriques Yusuf. Listen, man, Diego Lopes has some solid wins. Does he deserve a title shot over Movzar? No, he doesn't. It should have been Movzar in there, but he is the more dangerous and more exciting fight for Volkanovski. Now, if this was Volkanovski that had just lost to Makhachev and he was going back down to defend his featherweight belt and taking on Lopes, I would 100% pick Volkanovski. This ain't the same Volkanovski. I can concede that Volkanovski is the better fighter. He's the better striker, better kicker, the better boxer, the better kickboxer, arguably the better grappler, at least defensively. Diego Lopes definitely has better submissions because Volkanovski's not really a submission guy, but there's an asterisk with Volkanovski, man. Yes, he's the better mixed martial artist pretty much across the board, but Let's not pretend like this guy isn't 1-3 in his last 4. Let's not pretend like Volkanovski isn't 36 and a half years old, and he's been out of the cage for 13 months, and he's coming off of back-to-back losses. He has no momentum, and it's like whenever Volkanovski steps in that cage with Lopes, we know Volkanovski's a smart guy. He's going to think about whenever he got KO'd by Ilia Topuria. He's going to think about whenever he got KO'd by Makhachev. That stuff's going to be in the back of his head, because once you get KO'd, you know, Volkanovski had gotten KO'd by a welterweight early in his career. But he went on like a 13, 14 fight win streak, 20 fight win streak, something crazy before he lost to Makhachev, right? And then he got KO'd in the rematch. It's like once you get KO'd, it's like that confidence of like feeling invincible is not there anymore. So like what kind of confidence is Volkanovski coming into this fight, you know? Volkanovski has shown like a side to him where like he could be like struggling mentally whenever he's not fighting. He's shown that, which is... It is good that he's taken a year off to heal his chin, but man, there's a reason that fighters under the welterweight division are like 0-31 in title fights. There's a reason. Volkanovski is facing something that's been undefeated, and it's father time, and it's the 35-year-old curse, and I don't think this is going to change, man. I do think Diego Lopes will blitz in and find a bomb on Volkanovski's chin, and it's not because Diego Lopes is necessarily the more skilled or better fighter. It's just that he is not 36 years old. He hasn't been chinned twice in a row, you know? He hasn't been out of the cage for a year or 13 months, whatever it is. He fought at the Spear, which is, I know it's been a bit, it's been 7 months ago, but still, he's fought a lot more recently than Volkanovski has. And it's like, for Volkanovski, if Volkanovski does get chinned in this fight, that'll be 3 KO losses in a row. I do think he should 100% hang it up. But listen, man, let me not be delusional. I'm picking Diego Lopes by a second round KO, right? However, I do understand that if Volkanovski's chin holds up, and he just doesn't go down from like a decent shot from Diego Lopes, he is probably going to win this fight. Diego Lopes definitely has somewhat of a suspect gas tank. I think it's a little bit overplayed on how much people think he has a bad gas tank. Like, don't get me wrong, his gas tank isn't like Marab levels, but he has a solid gas tank. You know, I think a lot of people overlook into that Dan Ige fight. He cut weight like 3 times in 1 week for that fight, and he gassed out. So a lot of people were like, dude, Diego Lopes' gas tank sucks. Volk's going to school him, but it's like, I don't necessarily think that's a true narrative. His gas tank's not the best in the world, but it's also not like completely terrible. Like, it's not like Hamzat, you know? It's not like, I don't know, it's not like Michel Pereira, you know? He has a decent gas tank. I understand Volkanovski has insane cardio, but I think the younger, hungrier, more dangerous guy, well, Volk's hungry too, but I think the more dangerous guy is going to win this fight, and it's because Volkanovski's past his prime. It's not because Diego Lopes is a better fighter. So give me Diego Lopes by a second round KO. That's my official predictions for this weekend's card for 314, guys. This is the best card of the year so far. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward for Volkanovski to come back. And listen, if Volkanovski wins, I'm not going to be a hater. I do think it's more healthy for the division if Diego Lopes wins, being that Diego Lopes has not lost to Topuria. So if Volk wins, it'll be like, okay, Topuria is literally the father of the featherweight division. Whereas if Lopes wins, it can kind of move on. But yeah, these are my official predictions. I am excited for this card. I am kind of sad that Prates is no longer on the card, but we still get to see him against Ian Gary. But yeah, like and subscribe if you guys want me to bring the prediction videos back and make more of them. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.